Life often feels like a straight line: birth, youth, work, family, achievements, retirement. We are taught to measure progress in titles earned, goals achieved, and milestones celebrated. But hidden within this seemingly linear journey lies a quiet curve that most people never prepare for. It does not appear on any calendar, is rarely mentioned in family conversations, and is never formally taught in schools. Yet, it comes for nearly everyone, around the age of 60. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist and founder of analytical psychology, described this phase as a turning point where the ego, the self we built to survive, achieve, and belong, begins to give way to something deeper: the return to the soul. It is not a sudden collapse, nor a visible crisis, but a gentle, yet profound reorientation of life's axis. At 60, the soul begins to whisper, "It's time to return home." This article explores this quiet revolution in depth: why it happens, what it asks of us, and how it can lead to the most meaningful chapter of our lives. The curve no one talks about. Around the age of 60, a subtle yet powerful transformation often begins. From the outside, little may seem to change. The body slows slightly, routines simplify, and life carries a quiet rhythm. But internally, a different current starts to move. The goals that once consumed us begin to lose their urgency. The relentless desire to prove ourselves, to be admired, or to keep up appearances starts to fade. Even long-held ambitions feel strangely distant, as if they belong to someone else. This is not laziness or depression. It is clarity. The soul, after decades of following external commands, begins to turn inward. It seeks not another conquest, but a return to the silenced parts of the self, to the dreams that were set aside, to the wounds never fully acknowledged. Jung once wrote, "The first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego. The second half is going inward and letting go of it." This curve is the beginning of that letting go, from ego to essence. The first half of life is often a story of building. We strive to establish our careers, relationships, identities, and security. We adapt to society's demands, play roles that earn approval, and pursue what we were taught to value. This is necessary. Jung saw it as a phase of adaptation and conquest, where the ego is developed as a survival tool. But by 60, the psyche begins to demand something else: integration. Integration means turning to the parts of ourselves we left behind, our shadow, as Jung called it. The shadow is not only what is dark or shameful, it is everything unexpressed, the talents we didn't dare to show, the intuitions we ignored, the emotions we suppressed to keep the peace. At this stage, the soul calls them back, not to haunt us, but to make us whole. This is why people at 60 often feel a pull to revisit old memories, question their choices, or feel sudden longings to start anew, whether that means ending toxic relationships, returning to study, creating art, or simply living more truthfully. The longing for wholeness. What does the soul seek at 60? Not a faster car or a younger body. It craves silence. It longs for peace. It seeks the assurance that, despite everything, beauty still exists. Many find themselves re-examining their lives, their marriages, their children, their work, their choices, their unspoken regrets. But this is not about blame. It is about integration. The soul wants to gather what was scattered. It wants to open the inner drawers, discard inherited fears, forgive those who could not love properly, and release the endless need to be strong. There is a strange beauty in this phase, a beauty that has nothing to do with youth or perfection. It is the beauty of authenticity, the face without masks, the voice that no longer needs to shout, the presence that does not ask for permission to exist. A shift in values. At 60, time begins to be measured differently. In youth, it is about quantity, how much we can do, achieve, acquire. In this later stage, time is about quality, the depth of each moment, the truth in each gesture, the peace between words. Love too begins to change. It is no longer about possession or performance, about completing one another or proving worth. It becomes a quiet companionship, a shared silence, a glance that honors space. Fear loses its grip, not because life has become easier, but because we have fallen and risen enough times to know that fear is not the end. This is the age where wisdom is not learned from books, but from scars. It speaks softly, walks slowly, and radiates without needing applause. The season of lightness. Jung referred to this as a late individuation, a time when, after decades of adaptation, the soul finally says, "Now I want to find myself." This is not selfishness, it is awakening. Lightness becomes urgent, not the shallow lightness that denies pain, but a conscious lightness that acknowledges hurt without letting it rule. Many at this stage feel called to write, paint, meditate, travel, or simply walk alone. These are not escapes. They are forms of expression, ways the soul breathes after years of holding its breath. And in this breathing, something extraordinary happens. We stop wanting to return to the past or rush into the future. We simply want to be here, fully, presently, unapologetically. The quiet power of presence. There is a kind of freedom that only comes when you stop needing to explain yourself. At 60, you discover that solitude is not emptiness. It is presence. Silence is no longer uncomfortable. It becomes a refuge. Time is no longer a race. It becomes space. Space to breathe, to remember, to feel. Relationships shift. You naturally drift away from what drains you and move closer to what nourishes you. And when no one else is around, you find you can keep your own company. That is freedom. When being alone no longer means being lonely. This is the power of presence. You begin to feel what it truly means to listen with the heart, to speak only what matters, to say no without guilt, and yes with your whole being. Letting go to begin again. The soul at 60 whispers a simple truth. Be who you are, at last, without fear. This means letting go of old versions of yourself, of stories others told about you, of the need to be useful, productive, admired, perfect. What matters now is not what you do, but how you feel as you do it. It is not the size of your accomplishments, but the intention behind them. Jung believed this phase was the richest of all. Not a decline, but a revelation. The ego fades, pride softens, and time reveals what was hidden all along. That life was never about having, it was always about being. Being whole, being real, being present, even in the face of loss, scars, or imperfection. The beauty of ripened souls. There is a rare kind of beauty that only appears when the rush is gone. It shows in the lines of the face, in pauses between words, in eyes that have seen much and still can be moved. It does not demand attention, does not seek validation. It simply radiates. This beauty belongs to the woman who walks alone and feels no lack, to the man who cries in silence and knows it is not weakness, to the person who forgives quietly, without drama, because peace matters more than pride. At 60, this beauty begins to emerge because we stop fighting time. We stop chasing mirrors that never reflected our true light. We begin to celebrate our story, with all its pain, its choices, its delays, not as a failure, but as the path that led us here. The integration of all parts. In Jung's view, the second half of life is not about conquest, but integration. The forgotten feminine meets the suppressed masculine. The wounded child meets the wise elder. All parts sit together at the same table and recognize one another. From this meeting, a new strength is born, not the strength that dominates, but the strength that holds, the strength that sustains quietly, that asks for little. Only truth, only silence, only the courage to never abandon yourself again. This is the strength that carries the soul through the years without fading, living the rest of life with depth. As this turning point unfolds, we stop asking, how much time do I have left? And start asking, how deeply can I live the time I have? The world may still measure success by speed, power, and acquisition, but the soul now measures it by depth, presence, and truth. You no longer need final answers. You no longer crave endless doing. You seek only to be whole, present, reconciled with both light and shadow, to live without rushing, to feel without hiding, to speak without performing. And in that stillness, something miraculous happens. Life, which once felt like a race, begins to feel like a homecoming, the call to return. If you are approaching or already within this curve, you may feel it, a quiet call inside you, a sense that the roles you played no longer fit, that the ambitions you chased no longer matter, that the person you were is not the one you truly are. That call is not the end of life, it is the beginning of your truth. Carl Jung believed that true transformation does not come from adding more, but from integrating what was left behind. At 60, the soul is not asking for a new world. It is asking for a new way of being in this one, a way that honors everything you have lived, forgives what you could not change, and makes peace with what remains.